Yo, my peoples, what's up? Welcome to another 5 points review in the One Stop Co-op Shop, where I boil down everything you need to know about a game into 5 key points. Today I'm taking a look at Valeria Card Kingdoms from Daily Magic Games. It is for 1 to 5 players, in which you are a duke or a duchess in a fantasy land, acquiring citizen cards. Those are cards of numbers. You'll be rolling dice according to those numbers. The better you roll, the more resources you get, so that you can conquer monsters, buy domains, and become the ruler of the land. This one was originally released in 2016. When I backed the original project, I moved on from it. There were a couple of rough points, but since then the game has been iterated and expanded upon. So have the changes done enough to pull a player like me in who wants that dice rolling, engine building fun? Is it welcoming for new players? How's the solo mode? I'll go into all that in this review. This 5 points review is going to be a little bit different in that it's going to be 4 points on the basic game, and then 1 point which encompasses the 4 expansions, how it improves and iterates upon the original engine. Disclosure, I was provided the second edition of Valeria Card Kingdoms as well as the 4 expansions that I will feature by the publisher. My number 4, unfortunately a con, is the solo mode. Now, having said it is a con, it is not a terrible solo mode. It does work, but relative to all the solo modes out there, I think this one is lacking in a number of ways. So the way it works is that you play the game. You roll your dice, you get your resources from your personal area, and then you buy the citizens or you defeat the monsters, you move on. In the monster phase, whatever you rolled, so let's say you had rolled a 3-5, then the 3rd column and the 5 column are going to attack and they're going to remove a citizen, and then that kind of operates as a timer of the game. If there are a certain number of empty piles, or if the monster attacks a pile and it's empty, then that's bad for you. There's a couple of problems I have with that. Number 1, the game isn't doing anything to get in my way or show me any change whatsoever. The board is the same as it was when the bot started its turn, and that happens every single turn. So a good solo game should have that feedback. So like a tracker that moves along, or maybe it's one of those solo modes where it kind of puts pieces out, gets in your way. You have to kind of dance around whatever is happening. Something to give me the impression that I'm not just playing the game myself. In addition, the cards that the bot does acquire are going to go into its score pile. It has a secret duke, and then at the end of the game, it's going to score points based on whatever secret condition is. I want to be able to know my score. This is so swingy, so it could get a bunch of cards it doesn't need, or it can get a bunch of cards it does. Such a lack of control. So lucky. I just wasn't satisfied by that. And finally, I said that the bot kind of swings back and forth, but at the end of the day, it is kind of easy, especially when you know how to play. You can calculate the odds. I have doubled up, and one game I came close to tripling up the bot. That really shouldn't happen on a normal solo mode. So I can see that there is a good solo mode in this design, but I feel like the developers have some more work to do. My number 3, which is a pro, is the decision space. How the game presents a lot of information. So you got 20 cards in this outlay, but if you understand the grammar of the game, you can kind of figure out your strat pretty easily and execute. So a lot of the game is going to depend on these class symbols. So you have the assassin class and the protector and the workshop, etc. So pay attention to those. Look at what cards combo with those symbols. So as, for instance, the warlord, when they proc their 8, they will get 1 combat per helmet. So get a bunch of helmets, get the warlord, strat right there. Also, the domain cards tell you which classes to prioritize, so you have a focus. In this particular case, you have the Palisade. During your roll phase, you can pay 2 coins to set a die to a 6. So get a lot of 6s, get this Palisade, you're good to go. In any given game of Valeria Card Kingdoms, there's going to be, 3, 4, 5, 6 little paths, and choosing that path could be very interesting. If you are along one path and then either the game takes it away from you or somebody else does, you can pivot, or go for these smaller domains and get a lot of them, which will have an immediate impact. Lots of different decisions, and the game opens the path for you with its symbology. Well done. My number 2 is a mix. It is the famed glut of resources that you get in a typical game. So it comes from the way the dice are set up. So you proc each of the individual numbers. You also proc off of doubles, and you proc off the sum. So I will be procking a whole bunch of these cards, getting a ton of resources. In the first edition, that was a disaster because there was no tracker. It was just a bunch of wood that you got. And not only was it difficult to organize, it made things feel pretty meaningless. You like having choices, you like having abundance, but having everything as a choice because you have enough resources for it does not make for satisfying gameplay. So the second edition did a number of things to fix that. Number one, the tracker, just absolutely necessary. If you get that glut, you can add plus 10. I've gotten 20, 30 of a thing. The tracker does a lot to turn a deficiency into a strength. Also, the game's a bit smarter about what to do with those resources, especially these do cards. So this is scoring conditions that you get at the beginning of the game. So it will tell you that you get points based on how many resources you have left. So at least they're useful. That's not my preferred thing because you do enter the turns with too many resources and too many options. It's a little bit overwhelming. That hasn't really changed, but they have changed just enough around the edges to where I really think they have mitigated the worst aspects of it. My number one, a pro, is the abundance of resources that you can gather in this game. See what I did there? In the last point, I used the bad word glut. In this point, I'm using the good word. It is the same reality. It is the thing that is the beating heart of this game, all those resources. And the good part is, the game does a great job of leading you to slowly build up, focus on your numbers, and then you have that point towards the end of the game where you roll and you nail all your numbers, you get the resources that you need, and you do that big strike. I said the game struggles with balance. Sometimes you get too much, but there are definitely times where you're really shooting for the moon. You have to get that domain that would really light up your points or go for that big monster, and you roll, you get what you need, and you can execute. In games where those moments happen, that's truly satisfying and does set this apart from similar games. Sometimes you just want to roll and feel awesome for it, and this game does deliver that. First expansion I'll talk about is a mix, which is the Crimson Seas expansion. On the plus side, you get more of the good stuff, more monsters, more citizens. I'll get to that in just a second. The core feature of Crimson Seas is this sideboard, which represents the faraway land to which you're traveling. You have different land you could visit with one of these map tokens. You can collect gems for a set collection aspect, get some power-ups, some spare resources, and nobles. And it just gives more ways to get familiar things. So these are a little bit like domains, except you're spending wild resources, not just gold. Another way to get the resources you need, etc. My question is, did that need to be a whole sideboard that I have to set up if this isn't going to offer too much that is different from the base experience? It works, but in a new expansion, I would like to see it change the imagination, the horizon of the game a little bit. We'll get to that. I'm going to put these next two expansions together because they are the same paradigm, more stuff. And it is a pro. The Flame and Frost expansion and the Shadowvale expansion. In the base game, after a couple of plays, you'll know to seek certain kinds of combos in terms of putting your citizens together. That can wear itself out fairly quickly. With these expanded world of characters, you can change the combos, change the pace at which you get resources. It creates that variety and replayability that players are always asking for in our comment section. So in terms of the citizens, it doesn't do a lot of different type of stuff. It's just kind of like getting different things at different times. But like I said, the combinations change things up and vary up your game. I also appreciated a slightly different approach to the domains and the monsters. You need more to get that stuff. Look at that. You need a whole suite of stuff. That doesn't happen in the base game. Or the monsters, they start to really amp up in power. So then you start to need more resources in order to get them. And then, yeah, this is a huge monster. And it elegantly addresses the issue of having the abundance of resources. Now you need to have that much stuff. Now you need to play well, put your combos together in order to beat what the game offers you. Great additions. Final expansion I'll talk about is the Darksworn expansion, which adds two major things. One, the cooperative element. Now you're no longer competing for points. You're working together for a common goal. And that common goal is story-driven. I talk about changing the imagination of a game with expansion. Boy, howdy, does this expansion do it. Big pro. I mentioned that story. The key to this one is the prophecy book. There are 6 different missions that are strapped together in a campaign in an ongoing delve mode. So then as you go through the storybook, you'll have different thresholds, and the cards will challenge you to do different things, collect different resources different ways. In the later modules, it'll challenge you to pivot. So let's say you built your character one way or team of characters, and then another challenge will come out to, now I gotta collect this type of card. Change my strat up again. Really well done. The monsters are a lot different. Instead of standing piles, you now have a central pile and they come out river style. In addition, if you activate them by rolling their numbers, they will break the walls down. And eventually attack your citizens, which I found so much more thematic and satisfying than in the solo mode that is included in the base game. So I have to calculate, do I want to neutralize the threat on one area or sacrifice a certain side in order to focus on getting something else done? Really, really well done. Finally, this replaces the domains as a thing that we are seeking as players. Instead of just piling up the victory points as we defeat monsters, they now become currency, and these blessings will be one-time effects that fold in to the things that I'm already doing pretty seamlessly and allow me to accomplish bigger and bigger things on the board, or just recreate my walls and turtle up as necessary. Really well done. The whole package, I find, is a pretty outstanding mix of theme and mechanism, and definitely brings the whole VCK package to another gaming level for me. Some little difficulties, as you can see, there's some bowing on the boards. Not sure if that's true of everybody's product, and maybe this will work itself out over time, but that could be a little bit of a rough patch. Also, I mentioned this is the cooperative expansion. There's not a ton of direct cooperation. I do a thing, then I can set you up for you to do a thing, that chaining of moves, etc. It's more of a collaborative experience. We kind of celebrate getting resources together. If I do a poor roll, but then it's really good for my partner, I'm happy for my partner. So that will definitely depend on how much you value that kind of cooperative experience, but know what you're getting going in. So as I said in the intro, I had played the first edition and I wasn't too happy with it. I do feel like the second edition really considered that feedback and introduced a lot of different changes to improve the experience overall. In addition, those expansions really, really help get that variety and also address some of the core issues, especially that glut of resources coming in. With enough expansions, you have plenty to do with that glut. It becomes abundance and it feels really good. The most enjoyable aspect for me was the cooperative mode that came out of the Darksworn expansion. The least was the solo mode that came out of the base game rules as written. From what I understand, the developers at Daily Magic are looking at it and going to continue to develop it so that it is a satisfying experience all around for solo co-op fans such as ourselves. My sincere hope is that this review has featured enough of Valeria Card Kingdoms and all of its expansions for you to determine whether it's worth your time and attention. This is Jace with the One Stop Co-op Shop, and we'll see you at the next stop.